So there I was, Cadet Riley Knox, standing in the grand atrium of the Galactic Military Academy, trying not to look like a tourist while surrounded by beings that could probably bench press a small moon. Yeah, that's me, the human. The one everyone keeps staring at like I'm some kind of exotic pet that wandered into the wrong building. Oh look, a human, squealed Zafina, my insectoid roommate, her compound eyes practically sparkling with delight. You're even smaller than the hollows suggested. How adorable. Adorable. Right. That's exactly what every future military officer wants to hear on their first day. My other roommate, Thorgak, lumbered over. Picture a walking mountain with arms, and you're halfway there. This guy was from a high-gravity world where they probably used asteroids as footballs. Tiny human. But he rumbled in a voice like grinding boulders, I will protect you from harm. You are too fragile for this place. Thanks, but I think I'll manage, I said, adjusting my regulation uniform that definitely wasn't designed with human proportions in mind. Manage what exactly? This came from Vex, who currently looked like a purple puddle with eyes but was probably capable of turning into literally anything. The cafeteria has safety warnings about human dietary restrictions. Apparently most of our food could dissolve your internal organs. Great. Just great. Commander Bristock chose that moment to make his entrance, all 6 arms crossed in what I assumed was disapproval. His species looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a very judgmental librarian. Cadets, he clicked. Welcome to your first day of not dying horribly in space. Humans, his multifaceted eyes fixed on me. There are special safety protocols for your kind. Please try not to break anything, including yourselves. The other cadets nodded sagely, like this was perfectly reasonable. I bit back my first 3 responses, all of which would have gotten me kicked out before lunch. Now then, Bristock continued, today we'll be covering basic survival techniques. Humans, your species' infamous fragility, means you'll be observing from the safety booth. And there it was. Day 1, and I was already being benched. I looked around at my classmates who were all nodding sympathetically like I'd just been diagnosed with some rare disease. Thorgak patted me gently on the head with one massive finger, probably thinking he was being comforting. Don't worry, little human, Zafina whispered. We'll make sure nothing scary happens to you. Oh, this was going to be a long 4 years. Professor Klendrath's Biology of Interspecies Combat class was supposed to be enlightening. What I hadn't expected was to have my entire species' dignity systematically destroyed in under an hour. Now then, Klendrath announced, his tentacles writhing as he manipulated the holographic display, let's examine the Galactic Threat Assessment Scale. As you can see, Thorgak's people, the Granite Warriors, rank at level 9 out of 10. Thorgak preened, which was disturbing to watch on a creature made of living rock. Zafina's Hive Dancers clock in at level 7, thanks to their natural weapons and hive mind tactical advantages. My insectoid friend clicked proudly, her mandibles gleaming. Vex's metamorphic collective holds a solid 8, given their adaptability and infiltration capabilities. The purple blob rippled with what I assumed was satisfaction. And humans, Klendrath paused dramatically, come in at a whopping level 2. The entire class turned to stare at me. I could practically feel the pity radiating from every pore, scale, and breathing apparatus in the room. Level 2, I asked. What's level 1? Decorative plants, Klendrath replied without missing a beat. Oh, come on. What? But Professor, Zafina interjected helpfully, surely humans have some natural advantages? Klendrath consulted his notes. Let's see. No natural armor, no claws, no venom, no telepathic abilities, no ability to photosynthesize. He looked up. Oh, they can apparently run for extended periods without stopping. How quaint. Running away is a survival trait, Thorgak offered diplomatically. Now, let's discuss your homeworld apex predators, Klendrath continued. Thorgak, would you share? The stone devourers of my world hunt in packs, Thorgak said proudly. They're 30 feet tall, made of living magma, and can phase through solid rock. My people consider them a minor inconvenience. A minor inconvenience? These people were insane. Zafina? The void dancers in our system exist partially in another dimension, she chittered. They feed on fear and can reality warp small areas. Good hunting practice for younglings. I was starting to see a pattern here. Vex? Our world's apex predator is entropy itself, Vex gurgled. We learn to shapeshift by being constantly dissolved and reformed. Character building, really. All eyes turned to me. And humans, Riley? What terrifying creature dominates your homeworld? I thought about it. Well, there are sharks, I guess. And bears. Oh, and mosquitoes kill more humans per year than... Mosquitoes? Klendrath's voice carried a note of confusion. Tiny flying insects that drink blood. The silence was deafening. Then Zafina made a sound that I was pretty sure was the insectoid equivalent of cooing. That's precious, she said. Your apex predators are smaller than your own species. Actually, I said, I think technically the apex predator on Earth is. Look, interrupted Captain Zorvan, the Academy's star student and leader of the elite Apex Squadron. His species looked like someone had given a tiger opposable thumbs and delusions of grandeur. Can we move on from human show and tell? Some of us have actual military careers to think about. The class laughed. Well, made whatever sounds passed for laughter in their respective species. Of course, Klendrath said, perhaps it's best if Riley observes the predator simulations from a safe distance. We wouldn't want any accidents. And there it was again, the gentle, condescending protection that was starting to make my teeth itch. After class, my friends clustered around me like concerned parents. Don't listen to Zorvan, Thorgak rumbled. There's no shame in being evolutionarily disadvantaged. Besides, Zafina added, humans have other qualities. Like being, She trailed off. Small and unthreatening, Vex finished helpfully. It's actually quite useful for morale. Very calming presence. I watched Zorvan swagger away with his squadron, all apex predator species, all convinced they were the peak of military evolution. You know what, I said, making a decision that would either make me a legend or get me expelled. I want to try the predator encounter simulation. The hallway went dead silent. Even the automated cleaning drones seemed to pause in their work. Riley, Thorgak said carefully, that simulation is designed to test beings from level 8 threat rating and above. It's called the predator encounter for a reason. Yeah, I said, already walking toward the simulation center. I figured. The simulation center looked like something out of a nightmare fever dream, which was probably the point. Banks of holographic projectors lined the walls, and the air hummed with enough energy to power a small city. Captain Zorvan was just exiting the main chamber, looking smug and barely ruffled. Personal best, he announced to his squadron. Lasted 4 minutes against the Void Stalker before tactical retreat. 4 minutes against something called the Void Stalker. This was definitely going to end well. Excuse me, I said, approaching the simulation technician, a nervous-looking creature that resembled a cross between a squid and an accountant. I'd like to run the predator encounter simulation. The technician's eye stalk swiveled to focus on me, then immediately started looking around for hidden cameras. I'm sorry, did you say you wanted to run the simulation? That's correct. The predator encounter simulation. Yup. You, a human. Are we going to do this all day, or can I get started? By now, word had spread and half the academy seemed to be crowding into the observation deck. I could see Thorgak, Zafina, and Vex pushing through the crowd, looking like they were attending my funeral. Commander Bristock materialized beside me, all 6 arms crossed in maximum disapproval mode. Cadet Knox, this simulation is designed for apex-level species. The psychological trauma alone could be permanent. I'll risk it. The liability waivers alone would take an hour to read. I'll sign them blind. Knox, be reasonable. You're a level 2 threat rating going up against scenarios designed to challenge level 8s and 9s. I turned to look at him. Commander, with all due respect, how do you know what humans are capable of if you never let us try? That seemed to give him pause. Around us, the crowd was growing. I could see cadets from every species represented at the academy, all watching the crazy human who thought she could play with the big kids. Very well, Bristock said finally, but we're implementing every safety protocol in the book. The moment you're in genuine danger, we're pulling you out. Define genuine danger. Heart rate over 180, panic response indicators, loss of consciousness, or if you request extraction. Fair enough. The technician was frantically adjusting settings. I'm adding additional safety buffers, he announced. Pain levels reduced to minimum, injury simulation disabled, emergency extraction protocols active. Hey, called Zorvin from the observation deck, make sure to have medical standing by. I don't think humans are designed for this level of stress. The crowd murmured agreement. Someone had apparently started a betting pool on how quickly I'd hit the panic button. I stepped into the simulation chamber, which immediately began to shift and reconfigure around me. The walls dissolved into a nightmare landscape of twisted metal and shadow, with a sky the color of dried blood. Beginning simulation, the AI announced in a voice like velvet-wrapped razors. Participant human, level 2 threat rating. Initiating predator encounter protocol. Good luck, little human. You're going to need it. The walls of the chamber faded away, leaving me standing in what looked like the inside of a dying spaceship. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, and somewhere in the distance I could hear something that sounded like metal being slowly torn apart. First predator incoming, the AI purred. Let's start with something appropriate for your threat level. Great. Even the AI was patronizing me. Through the observation window, I could see my classmates watching with expressions ranging from concern to morbid curiosity. Thorgak was holding what looked like a medical kit. Zefina was wringing her hands, which was impressive since she had 6 of them. Even Vex seemed more solid than usual, which I'd learned was his species' equivalent of being tense. Remember, Cadet Knox, Commander Bristock's voice came through the comm. There's no shame in requesting extraction. Noted, sir. Yeah. Something moved in the shadows ahead of me. Something big, with too many teeth and a distinctly unfriendly attitude. Oh good, I muttered, my first space monster. This should be fun. The crowd in the observation deck leaned forward. The betting pool apparently wasn't very optimistic about my chances. Time to prove them wrong. Or die trying. Metaphorically speaking, of course. The first predator that emerged from the shadows was what I can only describe as a cross between a velociraptor and a nightmare. It was about 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like living shadow, and had more teeth than any reasonable creature should possess. Umbral Hunter, the AI announced helpfully, native to the dark side of Kepler 442 billion, hunts by fear scent. Current threat assessment suggests immediate extraction protocols should be. Yeah, thanks for the color commentary, I interrupted, watching the thing circle me like I was dinner. But I think I've got this. The creature lunged, all claws and malice. In the observation deck, I could hear someone gasp. Probably Zefina. Here's the thing about humans that apparently didn't make it into the Galactic Threat Assessment. We're really good at pattern recognition. This thing moved like a big cat, which meant I could predict its attack vectors. I sidestepped the lunge, grabbed a piece of debris, and clocked it right in what I hoped was its head. The umbral hunter staggered, looked confused, then tried again. Same result. Dodge, grab, whack. "That's not how this usually goes," the AI muttered. After the fifth failed attack, the umbral hunter sat down and looked at me with what I swear was annoyance. "Level 2 threat assessment, huh?" I said, patting the creature on what might have been its head. "Good boy. Who's a good interdimensional killing machine?" The crowd in the observation deck had gone very quiet. "Next predator," the AI announced, sounding less confident. This one was worse. Picture a spider the size of a small car, but instead of regular spider legs, each limb ended in what looked like a molecular disintegrator. The quantum weaver, according to my helpful AI narrator, existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously and could phase shift its attacks. "Okay, that's legitimately creepy," I admitted, watching the thing skitter along the ceiling. "But let's think about this logically." The spider thing dropped down, all 8 legs positioned to turn me into component atoms. I rolled sideways, came up with another piece of debris, and started making noise. Lots of noise. Banging metal on metal, shouting, basically doing everything I could to create a sensory overload. The spider froze, apparently overwhelmed by the chaos. Turns out, creatures that rely on precise interdimensional calculations don't handle unexpected variables very well. "What is she doing?" I heard Zorvan ask over the comm. "Creating cognitive dissonance in a quantum processing organism," Commander Bristock replied, sounding stunned. "That's actually brilliant." I kept up the noise until the spider retreated to a corner and refused to come out. Another victory for human stubbornness. "This is highly irregular," the AI complained. "Participants are supposed to demonstrate martial prowess, not whatever this is." "This is working," I pointed out. "Isn't that what matters?" The next few predators followed a similar pattern. The void maw, a creature that existed primarily as sentient hunger, got confused when I started talking to it about Earth cuisine. Turns out even cosmic horrors can be distracted by a good recipe for chocolate chip cookies. The psychic leech, designed to feed on fear and desperation, just sort of gave up when it encountered whatever passes for human mental architecture. Apparently our thoughts are too chaotic and contradictory for proper psychic digestion. "I don't understand," Vex said over the comm. "These creatures should be overwhelming her with terror." "Humans process fear differently," I called back, currently engaged in what appeared to be a staring contest with something that looked like a living mathematical equation. "We get scared, sure, but then we get annoyed. And annoyed humans are apparently harder to deal with than terrified ones." The mathematical predator gave up and dissolved back into pure numbers. "Final predator incoming," the AI announced, and for the first time it sounded worried. "It's deploying Void Stalker." The simulation chamber went completely black. Not just dark, the complete absence of light, sound, and apparently hope. This was the creature that had forced Captain Zorvan to retreat after 4 minutes. "Riley," Commander Bristock's voice was tight with concern, "your vital signs are still normal. Are you experiencing any fear response at all?" I thought about it. The darkness was absolute, and somewhere in that void something was watching me. Something that had probably eaten entire civilizations for breakfast. "You know what?" I said into the blackness. "I think I am scared. This is legitimately terrifying." A sound emerged from the void, low, rumbling like the universe clearing its throat. "But here's the thing about humans," I continued conversationally. "We're scared of everything. Heights, spiders, public speaking, running out of coffee. We live our entire lives afraid of something." The rumbling got closer. "So yeah, I'm scared. But I'm also tired, annoyed, and frankly getting pretty bored with all this dramatic buildup." Something moved in the darkness. Something vast. "So here's what's going to happen, Mr. Void Stalker. Either you're going to actually do something, or I'm going to sit down right here and start humming show tunes until this simulation times out." The darkness hesitated. I started humming the opening bars to Oklahoma. The Void Stalker materialized out of the darkness, and I immediately understood why it was considered the ultimate predator simulation. This thing wasn't just big or scary, it was wrongness given form. It existed in more dimensions than my brain could process, which created this nauseating optical illusion effect where parts of it seemed to be both there and not there simultaneously. "Okay," I said, still humming under my breath, "you're definitely the most disturbing thing I've seen today. Congratulations." The creature made a sound that bypassed my ears entirely and vibrated directly through my bone marrow. In the observation deck, I could see several cadets backing away from the windows. "Warning," the AI announced, and for the first time it sounded genuinely concerned. "Void Stalker exhibiting atypical behavior patterns. Safety protocols may be insufficient." "What do you mean, insufficient?" Commander Bristock's voice crackled through the comm. "The entity appears to be curious about the human. This is not within normal parameters." "Great. I'd confuse the Apex Predator simulation into having an existential crisis." The Void Stalker circled me, its impossible geometry making my eyes water. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, hide, or preferably both. But here's the thing about human instincts: we're really good at ignoring them when we're being stubborn. "You know," I said conversationally, "I bet you're used to people running away screaming right about now." The creature paused in its circling. Several tentacle-like appendages that existed in roughly the same space as my head tilted in what might have been confusion. "I mean, that's your whole thing, right? Ultimate cosmic horror, fear incarnate, the thing that goes bump in the void?" I sat down on a piece of debris, which seemed to perplex the stalker even more. "Must get pretty repetitive after a while." A sound emerged from the creature that might have been agreement, or indigestion. Hard to tell with interdimensional horrors. "Here's the thing, though," I continued, warming to my theme. "You're a simulation. A really good one, granted, but still just code and holograms. And I'm a human. We're basically a species built on the principle of hold my beer and watch this." The Void Stalker leaned closer, its non-Euclidean features shifting into something that might have been interest. "So while you're very impressive, and I'm sure you're great at your job, I'm not actually in any real danger here. Which means I can just sit here and appreciate the artistry that went into creating you." This was apparently not the response the stalker had been programmed to expect. It sat back, or did whatever the multidimensional equivalent of sitting back was, and regarded me with what I hoped was confusion rather than hunger. "Warning," the AI announced, sounding increasingly agitated. "Simulation parameters are exceeding acceptable ranges. The Void Stalker is exhibiting signs of dialogue." "Dialogue." Zorvan's voice came through the comm. "It's supposed to be a mindless killing machine." "Not mindless," I corrected, still looking at the stalker. "Just focused. There's a difference. Right, buddy?" "Bud?" The creature made another bone-rattling sound that I chose to interpret as agreement. "Riley," Commander Bristock's voice was tight, "what exactly are you doing?" "I'm having a conversation with the ultimate predator in the galaxy," I replied. "Turns out, it's been trying to communicate this whole time. Everyone's just been too busy running away to notice." The Void Stalker extended what might have been a limb toward me. I reached out and touched it, half expecting to be dissolved into component atoms. Instead, it felt like touching static electricity and the concept of loneliness. "You're lonely," I realized. "That's what this is about. You're the ultimate predator, so everybody runs away, but what you really want is just someone to acknowledge that you exist." The creature's form shifted, becoming slightly less geometrically impossible. The oppressive atmosphere in the chamber lightened perceptibly. "System error," the AI announced frantically, The Void Stalker is not following its programming. Initiating emergency reset protocols. Wait, I said, standing up. Don't reset it. I think we're making progress here. But it was too late. The emergency protocols kicked in, and the stalker began to fade. But just before it disappeared entirely, it did something that made the entire observation deck fall silent. It bowed. The ultimate predator in the galactic database, the creature that had forced evacuation of entire star systems in the simulation scenarios, bowed to a level 2 threat rating human who had treated it like a conversation partner instead of a monster. Then the simulation ended, and I was standing alone in an empty chamber while klaxons blared and the AI had what sounded like a complete nervous breakdown. That, I said to the stunned silence, was actually kind of fun. Can we do it again? The debriefing room was packed with more brass than a military parade. Apparently, word had gotten out that a human had not only survived the full Predator encounter simulation but had somehow made friends with it. The Galactic Military Academy's finest minds were trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. "Let me get this straight," said Admiral Krotak, a being that looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a filing cabinet. Cadet Knox completed the simulation not through combat prowess or tactical superiority, but through conversation? "That's correct, sir," Commander Bristock replied, still sounding stunned. She treated each encounter as a social interaction rather than a combat scenario. "And it worked?" "Remarkably well, sir." Her approach completely neutralized every predator in the simulation, including the Void Stalker, which has never been successfully completed by any cadet in the history of the Academy. I was sitting in the corner, trying not to look too smug while various high-ranking officials discussed me like I was some kind of fascinating lab specimen. "The psychological profile makes no sense," muttered Dr. Kellen, the Academy's head of psychology. "Humans shouldn't be capable of this level of cognitive adaptability under extreme stress." "Maybe," I suggested, "your psychological profiles need updating." The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop if pins made noise in whatever atmosphere this species breathed. "Cadet Knox," Admiral Krotak said carefully, "are you suggesting that our centuries of military psychological research are fundamentally flawed?" "I'm suggesting that maybe you've been underestimating humans because you've been measuring us against the wrong criteria." Thorgak chose that moment to lumber into the room, followed by Zafina and Vex. My friends looked like they'd been through emotional trauma. "Riley," Zafina chittered, "we watched the whole thing. You made that Void Stalker bow to you. How is that even possible?" "I listened to it," I said simply. Everyone else was too busy being terrified to notice it was trying to communicate. "But humans are level 2 threat rating," Vex gurgled, clearly struggling with cognitive dissonance. "You're not supposed to be able to handle apex predators." "Says who?" I asked. "Some assessment scale based on physical capabilities. Maybe the scale is measuring the wrong things." Admiral Krotak leaned forward. "What would you say it should measure instead?" I thought about it. Adaptability. Problem solving under pressure. The ability to think outside the box when conventional tactics fail. And maybe most importantly, the willingness to try something completely different when everyone else says it's impossible. "Those aren't predator traits," Dr. Kellen objected. "Aren't they?" I countered. "What makes a better predator bigger teeth, or the ability to adapt to any situation?" Commander Bristock made a sound that might have been laughter. "The cadet has a point. Humans may not be physically impressive, but they demonstrate remarkable cognitive flexibility. Plus," I added, "we're really hard to intimidate once we get annoyed. And apparently we get annoyed a lot faster than we get scared." Captain Zorvan, who had been unusually quiet throughout the debriefing, finally spoke up. "So what does this mean for the threat assessment scale?" Admiral Krotak considered this. "I think it means we need to create a new category. Something beyond simple physical threat assessment. What would you call it? Asked Dr. Kellen. The Admiral looked at me with what I hoped was respect, rather than concern for my mental health. Unpredictability factor. And I suspect humans are going to score very highly. Later, back in our dorm room, my friends were still trying to process what had happened. So you're famous now, Zafina said, polishing her mandibles nervously. The first cadet to ever complete the full simulation. I'm still just me, I said, flopping onto my regulation-sized bunk that was definitely not designed for human proportions. I just proved that sometimes the best way to deal with a problem is to treat it like it's not actually a problem. The other species are calling you the apex whisperer, Thorgak rumbled, sounding amused. That's ridiculous, I said. I just talked to them. It's not like I performed miracles. Riley, Vex said quietly, you made a void stalker bow. In our culture, that's pretty much the definition of a miracle. I shrugged. Maybe your culture needs to lower its miracle threshold. The next morning, I woke up to find a message waiting on my personal comm. It was from the simulation AI, which had apparently recovered from its nervous breakdown. Cadet Knox, it said in its velvet razor voice, I wanted to thank you for yesterday's session. In all my years of operation, no participant has ever treated my creations as entities worthy of respect rather than obstacles to overcome. It was educational. You're welcome, I replied. Same time next week? I look forward to it. I'm designing some new scenarios specifically for your unique approach. I think you'll find them interesting. Great. I'd impressed a military AI. This could either be the best thing that ever happened to me, or the beginning of a very short career. But as I headed to my first class of the day, passing groups of cadets who whispered and pointed as I walked by, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time since arriving at the academy, nobody was offering me safety protocols or asking if I needed protection. Turns out, all it took was making friends with the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Just another day in the life of a level 2 threat rating human who apparently specialized in impossible things. Who knew?